And our first main topic today gets submitted to us by Chase Coley, who writes, with the amount of news we've gotten, it gets harder and harder to ignore the possibility of Tobey and Andrew, that's Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield, coming back for Spider-Man 3 or Spider-Man No Way Home. Do you guys think if they do return to their roles, that it will be at the expense of Tom's version and his character development? I personally feel like it will take away from our current iteration. I think it will also take away from the friendly neighborhood Spider-Man saying and feeling. All right, thanks for sending that in, Chase. Now, of course, one of the big topics of discussion around movie fan circles the last number of months, maybe even the last year, was the whispers and rumors and possibilities that maybe we'll see Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire pop up in Spider-Man No Way Home. To be very, very clear here, there has been absolutely zero credible news or evidence that either Tobey Maguire or Andrew Garfield will be appearing in Spider-Man No Way Home. There's been absolutely zero evidence, zero confirmation. That doesn't mean that they won't, though. Like, I still kind of believe they will, but I fully admit that belief right now isn't based on any credible evidence.
Right.
So maybe they will, maybe they won't. Okay. So I kind of believe they will, but we'll see how it goes. It's an interesting question that's being brought up, that amongst all the talk about will or will not Andrew and Tobey show up, we haven't really stopped to ask the question, should or should they not show up in it? And our viewer who writes in raises a very interesting question. Would Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire appearing in a Spider-Man No Way Home, would it somehow, some way, detract from Tom Holland's Spider-Man? Would it somehow take away? Would it lessen? Would it put Tom Holland's Spider-Man in a diminutive position where suddenly we look at him lesser instead of greater than? It's hard to say, but my opinion on it is this. I personally don't think that and that's a huge if Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire show up in this movie, I don't believe in any way, shape, or form it'll take away from Tom Holland's Spider-Man. If anything, I actually think it'll prop up Tom Holland's Spider-Man. Because I believe if John Watts, the director of this thing, is going to bring in these other Spider-Men, he knows his Spider-Man is Tom Holland. John Watts knows that his Spider-Man is Tom Holland. And if he does bring in Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire, I believe this, Rob. I mean, I have no proof of this, but I'm going to go out on a limb and make a guess. Tom Watts will leverage Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man and Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man to, yes, bring in a nostalgia factor, to, yes, give some excitement to it. But I'm also telling you this, if he brings them in, he's bringing them in so that they can elevate Tom Holland's Spider-Man. He ain't going to bring in those Spider-Men, somebody else's Spider-Man, to diminutize his Spider-Man. He's not going to do that. If anything, he's going to use them to highlight and elevate his Spider-Man. So I get the concern of our viewer, Rob, asking, hey, if they come in, is that going to take away from Tom Holland? You got to remember who's in charge of this thing and who's in the director's chair. If they're going to bring them in, he's going to bring them in to elevate his guy. So I don't think, even if Tobey and Andrew show up, which is certainly no guarantee they will, but even if they do, I personally don't think they'll do it in any such way that takes anything away from Tom Holland's Spider-Man, who is the current, the reigning, the definitive Spider-Man right now. So I don't think they're going to take away from him. Rob, it's an interesting question. And one that we can't really definitively answer until the movie comes out, and if they're even in it. But if they are, Rob, do you think there's a danger that it'll take away from Tom Holland's Spider-Man?
Not really, because I think that's obviously would be a concern out of the gate, that they wouldn't want to diminish their own Spider-Man. And I think that they probably, look, despite what people might say, I think the Marvel Cinematic Universe, we can all agree now it's 24 films deep and 3 series. So we're at 27 shows. They've done a pretty good job of maintaining the integrity of their characters, and they're not going to want to diminish Tom Holland's Spider-Man. But I'll tell you something. All we have to do is, I think, look into the Spider-Verse. I mean, even though they had all these different iterations of Spider-Man, really the heart and soul of that movie was Miles Morales. And I think no matter what they do, as far as, let's say Tom Holland is surrounded by Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire, I think they would probably use Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield to prop up Tom Holland's Spider-Man, the same way that the other Spider-Men worked really well, like Nicolas Cage's version, and I think that it would do nothing except accentuate what's going on, because they don't want to. And you know what? They need to keep Tom Holland as an actor happy as well. They wouldn't want him to feel that his character is being slighted. I bet you that if they do that, I think the movie's going to be a lot of fun, and it won't diminish the MCU Spider-Man in any way, shape, or form. I don't think they would allow that to happen.
Yeah, now, of course, that leaves us still with the big question about whether we are even going to get Tom Holland or Andrew Garfield in the movie. And I think that's still a bit of a coin toss. I kind of believe they will be, but again, no credible evidence yet that they actually are. Anyway, guys, the question is for you. Let's assume for a moment that Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire do appear in the film. Do you think their presence by definition takes away from Tom Holland, or do you think it actually accentuates Tom Holland? What do you guys think about it? Jump down into the comment section below and let us know your thoughts.